On this week's episode of Amari Purple Talk, we're headed into the quantum realm because 17-year-old me was brought back by the 1999 Super Deluxe Edition, part 1 of the year in review, and more. Amari Purple Talk starts now. Welcome to episode 15 of Amari Purple Talk, a podcast where I share my thoughts on the Prince musical Singularity. I'm Richard Cole, your imagination soloist, and I want to start by thanking everyone that has tuned in. I hope you're enjoying the show. Please leave your comments on the show below or on my website, www.amaricommunications.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Amari_now and on Instagram at RichardCole_Amari. And with that out of the way, we're going to dive into our first topic. And our first topic is the 1999 Super Deluxe Review, Part 1, Into the Quantum Realm. All right, so Friday saw the release of the much anticipated 1999 Super Deluxe Edition. You got the remastering of the original LP. You got 2 CDs full of bonus tracks from the vault. You've got single mixes, B-sides, live concert, and DVD. And this is something that we've all been waiting for a very long time. Actually, I'm still waiting for mine because, well, Amazon kind of dropped the ball on me. So actually, I won't get it until around Tuesday. Other than that, I have had a chance to listen to it all weekend on Tidal. So I got to hear everything in its entirety. Only thing I have not seen is the DVD, which you would only be able to get with the 5 CD set and the 10 LP set as well. So I'm probably the last thing I'm looking forward to in regards to the 1999 release once I get it. But like I said, I've had a chance to listen to everything on Tidal. I'm going to give my initial overall reaction, to which this is absolutely amazing. I personally do not have a single negative thing to say about this album. It is absolutely amazing. For me, since Originals, this has been probably the most excited out of any release that the estate has put out thus far. I know the stuff regarding Sony is basically just kind of the opportunity for us to kind of fill gaps in our collection and get material out there that's been out of print for a while. But for the serious collectors, this particular set represents in the minds of a lot of fans the type of things that we would like to see out of remastered original albums, especially pertaining to the classic Warner Brothers period and any relevant unreleased material related to those classic albums. So with that being said, again, since I don't have the physical copy in my hands as of yet, and because we're going to cover so much ground in the review of this release, I'm breaking it up into different parts. And I wanted to focus specifically this week on the original mastered LP and disc 2, which contains a lot of the single releases, 45 single edits, extended versions, B-sides, and those items. Those are on disc 2. So part 1 is the review of the original remastered album and the singles on disc 2. And the reason why I've titled this piece Into the Quantum Realm, because listening to the remastered LP and revisiting The B-sides, which have also been remastered, and the single edits and those things, really, for the first time in revisiting a lot of this material since it had been released, has really brought back the feeling and the essence of what it felt like listening to this album and everything that was going on around that time. It's brought it back for me in the present. So, I mean, this is going to be a combination of, 53-something-year-old eyes versus, 17-year-old listening, melding of the two. We're in the quantum realm, folks. We're going to dive right into it. And here we go. All right. So basically, listening to the original album remastered, my initial impression is it's a huge improvement from the original CD release. And to me, it matches the essence of the original vinyl release, as well as, I'm sure, the 180-pound gram release from around 2015. So basically, the original CD release, I forgot what year. I know that when CDs originally were released, 1999, along with Prince's other Warner Brothers albums to that date, were released. At the time, due to time constraints, the song DMSR was omitted from that original release, and I swore I would never buy that CD until they were able to put that on the CD, which they did about maybe 6-7 years later. I can't remember, but that was when I bought that CD. Now, of course, why we're excited about this classic period being remastered and re-released is because the sound quality on both CD releases from the 80s and I guess early mid-90s, the quality is not so great, and especially when you're taking into consideration the advancements in technology as far as car stereos, home stereo listening, the advent of 20-bit to 24-bit remastering starting in the late 90s into the early 2000s, and the way things are mixed today and the improvements of quality for people that listen on streaming platforms. Okay, so with that being said, this original album remaster to date is the superior version of the 1999 album that you will get. So I would recommend whatever form you purchase the CD or the vinyl. Again, I have it on YouTube, 1999 Super Deluxe Edition. Which version should you buy? So if you're still on the fence, even after its release, I would recommend going back to listening to that, and hopefully that would help guide you in the right direction. So, but again, I can't say enough how much of the original remastered album is a huge improvement over what we've had since its original release on vinyl. The improvements, they restore memories of my listening experience from that original vinyl. Plus, it's enhanced by the subtle nuances brought forward in the mix by the remastered version. So not only did I get the same feeling that I had listening to it, way back in the day on a Panasonic component set, but also with today's ears and today's technology and the way that it was remastered, there's a lot of different nuances, little subtle sounds that are brought forward that I had never noticed even with the so-called state-of-the-art technology of 1983. So there's surprises. And there's very few albums that I listen to, regardless of the format, to where no matter how many times I play it, I always find something new, or I always hear something that I've never heard before. Even if I've played it 1,000 times before, there's always something new, whether it's a note or something, and I'm getting the feeling that that's what I'm going to get listening to 1999 with this version from this day forward, is that every time I listen to it, I'm really going to get something new that I haven't heard before. So it's very nice to revisit that. Like I said, it just feels great just being that teenager in your room listening, to your favorite album. And also too, this is very pre-Purple Rain. This is pre-superstardom. He was standing on the verge of getting it on. We were riding high from, the triple threat experience. You had 1999 that was out. You had What Time Is It that was out. You had Vanity 6 that was out. And, it's kind of hard to describe to people that have sort of come in after the fact, regardless of when, whether it was later in the 80s, put it this way, post-Purple Rain itself. It's kind of hard to express what listening to those three albums, and the momentum that was building, since pretty much Dirty Mind, that momentum as it was unfolding in real time. So this is still, cult following Prince. This is still underground Prince. And even as Little Red Corvette, kind of kickstarted 1999, because it was kind of dying off on the charts after a while. But the minute that Little Red Corvette crossed over and became a pop hit, as that video was getting heavy rotation on MTV, and also too, we got to remember that MTV, up until Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, there were no black artists that were being played on MTV at that time. So this was still a Prince that, like I said, post Purple Rain, it's hard to imagine if you were coming in any point during the decades after that, but before then, this was something it was sort of our best kept secret, and even after Little Red Corvette became a hit, it was still that level of, this was somebody that was different than anything that was happening at the time. And it took Purple Rain to kind of make him sort of a global superstar from that point forward. So, like I said, it's nice to hear this and kind of get a refresher or a reboot of just what it was like, when you really didn't know what to expect next, because everything after Dirty Mind was always a surprise. It was always, something taken to the next level. And to hear this again just reinforces those feelings. It brings back those memories, of what it was like to be a teenager into music, being a musician and that type of thing. And like I said, having this type of thing unfold in real time. So it was great to hear that. And then with that being said, the minute you were becoming a sort of deep cut fan, he was surprising us with the B-sides, which on disc 2, I get it. They put these things on for the completist, and I guess, it's great for the completist to have. I will say this briefly. It was probably around this period, starting with those B-sides, and probably ending with, Kiss was probably in 1986, the absolute last time I purchased a single on 45, because of the seeds that were planted here, 1982, 1983. So the first rumblings of B-sides, you had Gotta Stop Messing About from Let's Work, from the Controversy album. So that was sort of the first, but it was it was nice. It was a nice little new wave thing, and it was a cool B-side. But we just thought, probably back then it was a bit of a one-off with that. But starting with the 1999 album, as the 1999 album was sort of regaining momentum, and I know there was a re-release of the 1999 single, which had the B-side of How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore. And, again, just remembering the time, just showing up at school and, just hearing people talk about that single. And I think, if I remember correctly, the re-release of that single with How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore coincided with him having come to town. So it was, the buzz of everybody that had gone to that concert, that night, and then later on, whether it was the next day or, the Monday following the weekend, whenever he was here, and everybody just buzzing about How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore as a song, because no one had ever heard it before. And then, if I remember, all of a sudden I started hearing it on radio. So then it was like, okay, got to run out and get that single for that. So that was sort of the first time, as far as locally, that sort of buzz about B-sides and that type of thing, and rushing out to like, got to hear this B-side. And like I said, again, it's great to hear the remastered version of this because, again, it not only matches but enhances in some kind of way what I was hearing again on that Panasonic component set that I used to have. And since then, because I've probably, because I've dubbed it on cassette, for listening to it in cars and things of that nature. And of course, as that Panasonic started to break down, I never replaced the turntable. And it was around this time as well that CDs were becoming the norm. So every time I've listened to that song, or whether it was cassette, whether it was from the hits, the B-sides compilation that was out, the feeling was never quite the same. It's the same song. They didn't do an alternate take or an alternate version of it. But it was just the way, it was just sort of a dead sound. Because they just didn't put any thought into remastering any of his CDs. And I'm certain that because of his battles with Warner Brothers, they weren't even going to attempt to try to, keep up to date with any 20-bit or 24-bit remastering then. So it was always sort of a dead sound to it. So again, this with the remaster versions, they really brought it back. And I mean, even with that particular song, just the deepness of the piano playing, especially with the bass notes in that piano. Like I said, just remember how the tone would just give you a feel, from the original vinyl. So it's nice to hear that subtlety that's back with the remastered version. Also, the spoken word little interludes within the song that were kind of buried in the mix. That's brought back to me its true essence from the original vinyl 45. And another standout from that disc 2 is Irresistible Bitch. And that's the same, quality that I hadn't heard since buying the 12-inch single way back when. It's, and I'm playing it as much now, the remastered version, as much as I played the vinyl, because, I mean, that beat is just infectious. His drum playing. Now, here's the thing. We know that to create the time songs, and this was one that might have been originally intended for the time, and the creative process for the time albums, it was always Morris Day on drums and, Prince playing bass or everything else, to kind of brainstorm and get ideas and concepts for the next time album. And so the question is, and this has yet to be revealed, is there a version Because on the this disc, I don't think this version has Morris Day playing on it, as far as not this single, but with the unreleased vault tracks, there's an earlier version of this song, which I don't think Morris is on that. And I did a little research with Dwayne Tudhall's books, the Purple Rain Sessions, where in discussion of the recording from that track, there's a version recorded in 1983, which one of the versions is the official B-side release that's on this set. But there are other versions as well since the original 1981 recording of it. So if there's an unreleased version that has Morris Day playing on it, or is Morris Day playing drums on this one? But either way, I'm going to go with it's Morris's style, but there are some familiar patterns in there that are really Prince patterns. And listening to it, might have been, maybe last night or night before last, listening to it. There's certain feels in there that deeply remind me of patterns and feels that are in the Parade album cut of Life Can Be So Nice. So based on that, I'm going to lean more towards this is Prince playing the drums on this and not Morris Day. And that somewhere in that vault there is a version of Irresistible that has Morris Day playing on it. So thanks to the remastering or the remastered version of this track, I have come to that conclusion after many years of speculation. So I'm going to go with that. And so again, also too with this song, again, there's other nuances that are coming out in this remastered version that I never noticed before, such as the rhythm guitars that you hear on one side of your speaker, they're really deep in the mix. If you have headphones on, you could probably hear it better, or it's more prominent through headphones. But there's something that I've never noticed. There's a part that's on top in the mix. There's guitar parts, but there's some like little subtle throughout, like rhythm guitar with slight wah-wah pedal maybe. To me, and that version is deeper. It's funkier than any live version of that song that I've ever heard. So as much as I enjoy hearing that song live, with this, the studio version to me will always be the superior version of that song. Also too, the backward voices you hear, the whole time, even on the original vinyl B-side, I always thought that was limited to just like the song's intro and maybe like a first part of the first verse. But again, when you listen to it with this remastered version, you kind of hear it consistently through a majority of the song itself, which is something, it's new, it's fun to hear. Like I said, it's a nuance that's been brought out by this remaster. Initially, I feel kind of as the song goes on, it's a bit of a distraction, but I might change my mind again after I listen to it. But overall, like I said, the overall feeling is that, again, it brought me back to 1983 for sure on that. And that's about it. Let's see what other beats. Well, there's the dance remix version or dance mix version of Little Red Corvette. That was something that was brought to my attention. I didn't get it initially. There was a friend of mine that had that 12-inch single first and played it for me, and somewhere down the line, I ended up purchasing that 12-inch single a little bit later. But I enjoyed listening to it. Then and even now, it's not my favorite 12-inch single extended version of his, but like I said, it's nice to hear. It's always something that's, definitely has to be a part of your collection for sure. So I'm glad it's included on this super deluxe edition of 1999. But yeah, I do I do enjoy the song. And like I said, just having that collection of singles run together, it's something I do find myself, or having found myself, revisit and give a listen to, but not as much as, say, How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore and Irresistible on that one. So that is it. Oh, well, getting back to the original mastered CD, any standouts would be 1999, again, little subtle nuances with this new mix that I hadn't noticed before. Throughout, like just the pops of the Linn drum, both the kick, the snare parts, a lot of those, the deepness of the Oberheims. That's something that's been brought back through this mix. Like I said, just anytime I've heard any of these songs or revisited the CD, again, it's just enjoyable, to hear the songs, but to, like I said, bring back that essence of what I heard on that original vinyl is amazing. I know I'm being repetitive with that, but that's the effect that it's had on me as far as listening to this, and why I have been reminded of how much of a favorite album of his this has been. I always go to, say, Sign of the Times. Parade is an enjoyable one for me. Even more modern stuff, Musicology is a good one to hear. So I don't know, maybe I just kind of took this one for granted all of those years. It's kind of like, 1983 was a long time ago. Yeah, it was great, but I'll say this. I also this year got the anniversary edition of Abbey Road. And maybe in a future broadcast, I will discuss the merits of maybe the estate looking into engineers that are as versed as the team over at Abbey Road that have been responsible for enhancing like Sgt. Pepper, White Album, and this Abbey Road edition. Maybe looking into really, really sitting down and working with the mixes for, say, a 50th anniversary of 1999 or 50th anniversary of Purple Rain, for that matter. But I'll say this in comparison. This 1999 Super Deluxe Edition has the same effect as the Abbey Road Anniversary Edition, as far as it has completely shifted my listening and enhancing my enjoyment of listening to that album. So that's it for the original album and disc 2 remasters of all the singles and B-sides. What do you guys think? Are you enjoying it so far? I know you are. I haven't seen one bad review online by anyone anywhere. I know other Prince podcasters, their reviews are already up and running, and I'm looking forward to listening to those as well. So, and I'm waiting for my physical copy. So that, like I said, that'll be it for the first 2 discs on that. So next week I'll discuss the vault tracks. So stay tuned for that. But again, what do you think? Leave me a comment below. And from that, we are going to end this topic, and we're going to move on to our next topic. And our next topic is Parade versus Sign of the Times. What will the next deluxe edition be? Well, and this comes from, I was on social media and ran across somebody on one of the Prince Facebook pages, And that was sort of the question. Everybody puts that question every time that there's a deluxe edition release. We're happy and anxious to get this one, but sometimes even before this one comes out, we're already thinking ahead to, well, which one's coming next? Which one's coming next? So this one, I've kind of been wanting to get to this topic for a long time. So I'm using this episode to finally get that one across. And I don't know if you've heard previous episodes that I've done in regards to whether it was a project wish list topic or it was a subject matter on something in regards to, I don't know, just off the top of my head, when will we ever see the gold experience again? If you haven't heard that episode, go back and look for that one and listen to that one as well. But I've always maintained that as far as any classic material, here we are, we're just weeks away from 2020. And in 2021, the Warner Brothers license that was part of Prince's original licensing agreement when he got his master recordings back from Warner Brothers, that is going to expire in 2021. After that, the estate has entered into part of their licensing agreement overall with Sony to get those Warner Brothers classic album master recordings for release. So once after 2021 hits, any future classic albums, and when I mean classic albums, kind of the stuff 78 to 88, but also you have, with the exception of Purple Rain, Parade, Batman, and Graffiti Bridge, you will have like Diamonds and Pearls, you have the Symbol album, and I think that's pretty much it, because everything after 1992 is already in the hands of Sony anyway. So that being said, or anything up until, help me out folks, 1995, I think. Anyway, once 2021 hits and Sony gets control, or not control, but the licensing of those Warner Brothers masters, then the question is, what will they release first? Now, this is where the topic of Parade versus Sign of the Times is significant, and why those two particular albums in particular. And like I said, seeing this question on social media and, previous questions before or since then, the reason why these two albums are significant is because you have, on the one hand, you have Warner Brothers always having control of the original Parade album itself. Any tracks intended for that album, as well as B-sides. Now, here's where this gets a little tricky too, because the B-side Alexa de Paris was in the film Under the Cherry Moon. Love or Money was also in Under the Cherry Moon. And I'm trying to think of any other B-sides, unreleased material. But the bottom line is that even those two songs, I believe, since they were utilized in the film, would be per the terms of the agreement with Warner Brothers Pictures in regards to them owning the soundtrack, which is why Purple Rain, Parade, Graffiti Bridge, and Batman will not be part of this transfer over to Sony, because a license for a soundtrack for a major motion picture, it's a different contract than your standard recording contract. So that being said, this is significant because, like I said, you have Warner Brothers in control of Parade, the album itself. On the other hand, you have Sign of the Times. So if you're Warner Brothers, what do? You know your contract is expiring. You know by now that the buzz that's been created by the 1999 Super Deluxe Edition, and for all intents and purposes, the volume that I'm seeing online from everybody doing their unboxing videos, to holding up their copies in the record store, to getting home and showing their copies on social media, I'm getting the feeling that this thing is just over the course of this weekend, and definitely over the course of the next weekend, and probably all the way through Christmas and beyond, that this thing is selling, and selling well. And regardless of what version you bought. Now, the majority of people I've seen, they're holding up the 5 CD version. They're holding up the 10 LP version. So again, I'm getting the feeling that this is selling. So as Warner Brothers, what do you do next? Now, you know your contract is about to run out in another year. So basically, you have a year to release one, maybe two things. Now, maybe one won't necessarily be a Super Deluxe Edition, but the other one could possibly well be a Super Deluxe Edition of something. So that being said, what do you do if you're Warner Brothers? So do you just play it safe? Go ahead, put out Parade? Or do you go for the money shot and go ahead and release that Sign of the Times Deluxe Edition? And if you're Sony, after 2021 hits, then what do you release first? And the reason why that's significant is that really, ever since they've entered this contract with the estate, it seemed like the main agenda has been to really just take all the officially released material from 1995 and make it reaccessible to the fans. So, number one, there's not a lot of money that's shelled out in regards to promotion. There wasn't a lot of money shelled out in regards to having a complete remaster. And there hasn't been any significant money spent on gathering any relevant vault material, because any vault material, I think regardless of the period, now I don't know the nuances because I don't have access to Prince's Warner Brothers contract, but I'm assuming that based on a lot of the published reports is that the estate has absolute control over every single thing that was in Prince's vault. So whether that was from starting with 1978 all the way to the present, that's my initial guess. So when it comes to a 1999 Super Deluxe Edition, then in this case, it is a sort of a big agreement between Warner Brothers, which is the distributor, the estate through Sony is licensing the vault material. So all they're doing is sitting back and basically collecting a percentage of the paycheck with that. So again, if you're Sony, what do you do? So do you just go ahead and maybe try to come up with something from the later period and do a significant release? Do you gather a compilation of vault tracks and release an independent album? And by independent album, the best example would be with the Jimi Hendrix estate, where You've had the official release, and in the case of them switching from Universal to Sony, the re-release of the officially released albums. And then there have been numerous releases, and I'm not counting the live concert material, things like that, but compilations of tracks taken from a certain era and compiled to make a brand new album release out of it. So if you're Sony, do you play it safe and go that route post 2021? Do you do it before 2021? We don't know what's in store for us for 2020 as of yet. So going back to Warner Brothers. So do you not play it safe, and knowing that your contract is about to expire in another year, then do you play for all the marbles and release Sign of the Times as the next deluxe edition? So, either way, us as the fans, we still win, because regardless of when it comes out, we'll be happy to get it. But in terms of, if you're a major fan of Parade, like if Parade is your utmost favorite album, is that something you would like to see Warner Brothers go ahead release now, or hold it until 2021 and release it sometime after Sony releases whatever they're going to release? Or is Sign of the Times your favorite album? And same thing, would you like to see Warner Brothers release that in the deluxe edition and have it sooner before the contract runs out? Or do you wait to see what Sony does? Now, Sony, wow, they have, as far as, let me think if Universal, let's see, Universal has control, well, not control, but they have a licensing agreement, because I think they purchased EMI, so they have a licensing agreement with the Beatles. So I'll leave them out of the picture for now. But as far as Sony, as far as my favorite artist, there's Jimi Hendrix, there's Miles Davis, there's Bob Dylan, and I'll just leave those three as examples. And if you like, on your own time, just kind of look at what Sony Legacy has been doing with their catalog. Now, basically, 2 out of those 3 people that I just mentioned, those 3 artists I just mentioned, are no longer with us. But Bob Dylan, prior to Prince's ascension as a superstar, was the most heavily bootlegged rock star on the planet. So for him to sort of kind of take the initiative, and to take Frank Zappa, who also took initiative during his lifetime, and then even with his estate, carrying the ball and moving it forward, taking huge efforts at beating the bootleggers and getting a lot of that vault material out into the hands of the fans in an official capacity at fair pricing. So if you look at the track record of Sony and the potential of what they can do, yes, cool. Purple Rain Deluxe Edition was cool and everything, and it was nice to have. The originals release was nice. Like I said, a good step in the right direction for the estate. 1999 Super Deluxe, a quantum leap in the right direction with what they've been doing so far as handling the different releases. But if you look at what Sony has done with Miles Davis's catalog, what they're currently doing with Jimi Hendrix's catalog, and that's been since 2009, that they've had the licensing for it. And going back to Universal, they were doing a pretty good job as well with a lot of Jimi Hendrix's vault material as well when they had the licensing of it. And like I said, Bob Dylan, who's still with us, thank goodness, is been proactive since the 90s and still putting out products. So, I mean, since the early 90s, this man has been releasing his vault stuff. He's been releasing new stuff. And, Sony's been doing an excellent job with those releases. So just imagine once they have everything from the second Prince album all the way to the present. Imagine the releases that we will get as fans. So, I don't know, getting back to the original point of the topic, my impression is I am going to, as of today, maybe lean towards Sign of the Times getting the deluxe treatment. And with that being said, once the 50th anniversaries of, again, 1999, Purple Rain, Sign of the Times, I think once those years start to pop up, then we're really, really going to get, number one, the definitive masters of the original albums. The vault tracks will probably be more comprehensive. Like I said, I don't have a complaint with the unreleased versions on this one, but I will share my complaint with the Purple Rain Deluxe Edition is that some of the tracks were not relative to the album itself. So I would say, yeah, when Sony finally gets its hands on everything, I would say watch out. So I would, at this stage, lean towards Sign of the Times being the next Super Deluxe Edition. And once 2021 hits, Parade will probably be Warner Brothers entry. That'll be the first card they have to throw down. Because after that, they'll still have Purple Rain, which they can probably release over and over again in the current form that it's in. Then you're going to have to deal with at some point, a 40th anniversary of the release of the first Batman movie. You have to deal with that at some point. I thought they missed an opportunity this year with its 30th anniversary to cash in. But I mean, hey, I'll take 1999 over Batman. I like the Batman soundtrack, but I'm not trading in this 1999 Super Deluxe for it. So that one can wait. And then Graffiti Bridge 2, that's another one. Again, that's a card they can hold to cash in whenever they need to cash it in. So with that being said, like I said, I'm going to go with Sign of the Times, then Parade. But what do you think? Which one would you like to see Warner Brothers release next in conjunction with the estate and with Sony in regards to the vault tracks for a Super Deluxe Edition? Or do you have a favorite that you would like to see be the next Super Deluxe Edition? Let me know in the comments, and then that's going to end this topic. And we're going to move right on to our next topic. And the next topic is Questlove Instagram post causes a stir among Prince fans. All right, so during all the hoopla with the release of the 1999 Super Deluxe Edition, a post from Questlove popped up. It's a pretty long one. I'm not going to read the entire thing. But the gist of it is that he felt, let's see, how can I put it? he felt a little conflicted, and pretty much conflicted due to the fact that, like a lot of us as Prince fans or music fans, as owners of bootleg material, now that this stuff is finally being released to the public, there's a consensus among some people that you don't feel special anymore. You don't feel like you're part of this secret club anymore. And me personally, I got over that feeling a year after Purple Rain came out. So it didn't cheapen my interest as a fan in any way. Since Purple Rain, I mean, there's a lot of people that love Around the World in a Day. I have a fondness for it. I feel with a different track listing, to me, it would be equal to Sign of the Times or 1999 for me as a top tier favorite. But it's an enjoyable album. But I've learned that basically in the subsequent years that it's great, and you've even heard Prince say this in interviews, where it's nice to put on one of his albums and each one be different. So there's something for everyone. And there's been interviews where he prides himself on wanting, say, the biggest section in the record store. And that he was aware that not every song, every album was going to be a big, huge hit. But somebody was going to buy at least one of them. And as you've seen within the Prince fan community, that, it's very diverse. Now, don't get me wrong, people have their favorite eras of Prince. People have their favorite albums. And people have their least favorites and so on and so forth. But that's the beauty of being a music fan, that diversity. So, what I like, you may not like. What you like, I may not like. Or we all might like the same thing. But music, as well as movies, are a very subjective thing. So it doesn't make one, oh, that was a terrible album. It just means that it may be an album that I might not like. So the gist of it is that what fans were getting upset about was that through this post, that is feeling like, oh, well, Prince didn't make any good music after 1988. And granted, he's entitled to his opinion. So what I wanted to get into was, well, is this post really as bad as it is? Now, I don't know Questlove personally. Now, I did meet him once. It was at a record signing. The album Do You Want More? I had my CD copy and he signed it. Can't find it to this day, but he did sign it. And I did get a chance to ask him a few questions. And this was, 2 years after Voodoo came out. And, was asking about how his career was going. And when the next D'Angelo album was coming out. And, and he was a cool guy. He didn't put on any airs of being a star or anything like that. He didn't blow me off. He did answer my questions and, about the state of where the Roots were going, because they were going through a label change at the time. And, they were saying, like, people were whispering in his ear about, they were trying to basically divide D'Angelo and Quest, so there were those things. So, but the overall impression was that this was a nice guy. So, but again, I don't know the guy personally or anything, but like I said, again, is this a slap in the face to Prince fans? So, like I said, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it does start off that I am conflicted as a Prince fan. Use my connections and privilege to get access to things I heard, acquired that y'all haven't. Maybe because the demo rehearsal process was how I felt I got to know how his mind works. as opposed to the final approved product. Okay, and then goes on to give some examples. He also makes a few key notes of what we're hearing on the 1999 Super Deluxe edition. And let's see. So, like I said, we're trying to get to yeah, I mean, again, make some comments on the Super Deluxe edition of 1999. Again, more notes. Okay, so go down to, I'm sad that the more we discover song-wise, the closer we get to closure and finality of saying goodbye for real. I mean, I know 78 through 88 has 2,000 songs and a gazillion rehearsal jam hours logged in. So it's like he is still here. But soon I'm going to have to come to grips that he isn't. Okay. So for some reason, there's a lot of people that took that out of context and felt like he was basically just dumping on everything that has come to pass since. Now, we do know that, just like a lot of us, that classic album era from 78 to 88 is crystal clear for us. And as you've heard me muse just on the review of 1999, as you've heard me, wax nostalgic on certain topics on previous episodes, as you notice my campaign for wanting the time into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, yeah, that's my era. And the reason why that's my era, it was because I was 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 during that era. Whether you're a musician or not, the things that you're influenced by, or the things you're exposed to musically at that age or culturally at that age, that's it's mind opening. You're still growing. You're still learning. You quite haven't reached adulthood yet. You're still like a sponge soaking it up. You also have your rebellious periods as well, or periods to where, you're changing and you really don't know why, or whatever it is that you're going through. Those are your sort of other formative years. So, of course, those, what we call the soundtrack of our lives, is for that very reason, because as you're experiencing first dates, driving for the first time, your 16th birthday, your 18th birthday, your graduation, turning 21, going to clubs for the first time legally, drinking legally, all of that as you're going through it. Whatever song is unfolding in real time, meaning that, for a lot of folks, for a lot of us, there was one day when Dove's Cry didn't exist. He may have had it recorded and had, and it was just on the verge of being released. But for us, it didn't exist until that first time we heard it on the radio. So this wasn't a song that had been around for generations and we're just hearing it, So of course, that's going to be your formative years. And, Quest, who I think is like a few years younger than I am, like I said, grew up in that same time period. And that magic was unfolding. Magic, Michael Jackson's word. That funk was unfolding in front of us in real time. So, of course, whatever memories that he has tied to that era, of course, that's going to stay with him. That being said, I'll say this using my personal experience. I was exposed to the Beatles 6 years after they broke up. So the songs were already there. And there was an office that I worked for. And one of the executives in that office, in his office, he had a massive CD collection, kind of older guy. And of course, so his time period, of course, is that magical time of the 60s and the 70s, maybe a little bit of the 80s a bit, but definitely the 60s and 70s, where it was the Beatles, it was the Stones, it was Traffic, it was, Eric Clapton, it was Cream, it was all of that, and like I said, through different conversations, like I said, he discovered that, I was a big, huge Beatles fan. And one day, he asked me the question of, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was put in the context of, is it the relevance to my real time as opposed to the nostalgic factor? And and this is for, like I said, anybody that's come in post Purple Rain. I've read things online where people were exposed to Prince, just as recent, where, Musicology was their gateway. So whatever the current album was, 2002, 2004, 2006, for a lot of people, that was their gateway. Never mind all the Purple Rain stuff, never mind 1999, or they're sitting around, what are these people going on about 1999 about? Well, like I said, it's what you experience, and everything's subjective. And also, too, in a lot of cases, certain movies, lots of music in particular, doesn't matter when it was released. It could be 100 years ago, which is why people still go on about classical music, which is why people still go on about, certain jazz artists that, we're approaching, 100 years since they first started, maybe 50 or 60 years to you and me. So, it's all subjective. So the point being, is this something that's, that's a slap in the face to Prince fans? And I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at a guy who has had an opportunity that very few of us have had. And in relationship to the experiences of, again, when this was unfolding in front of us in real time. So he's had an opportunity to meet Prince on numerous occasions, jam with Prince on numerous occasions. And though I wouldn't say that maybe Prince considered him an equal, I don't know what was going on in his head, or I can't speak for him. But as a musical contemporary, somebody that was in the music business, then I feel that, okay, then there's, that thing of where at this time Prince was more of the elder statesman at that point. So, is this a slap in the face to Prince fans? No, I don't think so. It's just somebody who has the benefit of being a celebrity, which, if this was me posting it, I'm just a guy in a little tiny room doing a podcast every week. I'm nobody famous or anything like that. If it was me posting it, it would go ignored. There might be some people that, they might get a little cheesed off about it and say, that era was terrible. Well, but since we have somebody that's a celebrity, it's kind of easy to just kind of take anything they say out of context, and vice versa. Sometimes celebrities kind of make the mistake of, it's like, they're human beings. We kind of forget that. But then at the same time, when they type stuff like this, they kind of forget that there's people that are looking at them as celebrities and hanging off of every word, both positive or negative. And, it's blood in the water at that point. They're just ready to be negative and ready to attack. So, like I said, I don't know the guy personally. Sometimes, when he's on about, his collection and stuff like that. Yeah, sometimes it can be kind of interpreted that way. I just don't take it seriously myself. It's just kind of like, okay, this is a cool guy. He's got a big record collection. Nice. He's got all these Prince bootlegs, but then again, yeah, he may have had a lot of access to the things that the majority of us Prince fans have never heard. But by the same token, there's a majority of Prince fans that have just as much, if not more, than he did. So, but I think this particular post, it does bring home a very valid point. We're just, what is this? We're going to 2020, which in 2020 puts 4 years since Prince's passing. And in terms of a fan base dealing with the loss of a celebrity of that magnitude, yeah, those wounds are still fresh because of the fact that regardless of when you jumped on board as a fan, those songs had a relevance to you. In answering, and like I say, he worked in the office. I didn't work in his department, but like I said, we discussed music, just about all the time while I was there. But to answer that question, it was, I don't know, I couldn't put my finger on it, except with, I think more so it's that sort of, again, funk, not magic, that you got from that group dynamic. From the first thing that I heard that said, oh, I got to go out and buy that Beatles record now. But to answer that question, it was just because the songs were good. And something in those songs tapped into my frequency at that particular time, which, to this very day is a frequency I like to revisit. And it only has gotten better and better. And when you have an artist that could do that and stay consistent over over decades of time, there's a beginning point, and that's when you get turned on to it, and it just manifests from there. So the bottom line in regards to being a Prince fan, or message to all the Prince fans out there, it's regardless of when you jumped on board as a fan, there was something about whatever song it is that tapped into your frequency that now, like I said, we're almost 4 years in to him not releasing new music in real time. What we're going to be getting from here on out will be, to some of us, new music that was recorded a long time ago during his lifetime that we've never heard. So this post is somebody that is a deep cut fan who just happens to be a celebrity coming to grips with the loss of a celebrity whose music has meant so much to him in the past, regardless of what era that is. Part of the reason, heck, I'm doing this podcast, it's, I guess, my own little way of coming to grips with it. There's only really, to be honest, maybe 3 people on this planet that I can have a legitimate, serious, long conversation about Prince's music, and we all would get it, where you wouldn't even have to explain it. You just rattle off the song and it's like, I know where you're going with that. So, but since we all have busy schedules and lives and families of that thing, it's harder to find the time to sit down and really come to grips with it. So me doing this show is just one way of finding myself coming to grips with it, because I never expected to do a show like this, or a podcast for that matter. And when I started getting into the idea of doing a podcast, this was the absolute first thing that I wanted to do a podcast on. So that being said, yeah, we're all sort of dealing with it, still to this day. But it's like anything, we're all shocked that someone's no longer in the picture, but it doesn't mean that their, spirit or presence doesn't continue. And when it comes to a celebrity, in this case, a musician whose main mode of expression was music, an artist whose main expression was music, then, like I said, it's something that's, it's been your high. It's been there during your low. It's your comfort. It's your, it's your soundtrack. It's your theme song. It's what gets you going through the day when nothing else will, So instead of, going for drink or for drugs, there's this song that gives you everything that you need right there. It's love, it's romance, it's right there in the song. It's dance, music, sex, romance. And I'll even add this, it's the funk, and as George Clinton says, funk not only moves, it can remove. So again, I don't think that, this post, should have, people getting ready to nail them to a cross, or anything. So, people just get over it. This, like I said, this is somebody that's a fan, who's had access that a lot of us wish we had, but that being said, like I said, I think it was just him just dealing with that concept, because there's going to come a point to, where this plane is finite. Spirit moves on, but as far as this particular plane, the vault can only go so deep. Yeah, there's that thing of, the state be releasing albums 120 years from now and that sort of thing. But there are, I guess, things in our so-called unreleased collections, that where, again, all of us don't have every single thing. And there's going to come to a point to where, officially all of this stuff will be out into the world. And what happens when it's like, okay, well, I'm on board with the vault till this particular period. I'm of course sure there'll always be surprises down the road, and I'm excited to hear those. So that's a different level right there. But it's going to come a time where it's going to start to run out for some people. And then, too, at the same time, it's like, why is everybody being so selfish? Because, again, like I said, there are people that jumped on board as late as Musicology. And it's like, damn Purple Rain, forget 1999, forget everything else. So I don't know, just, it's all right. There's people that's going to come on board because of this super deluxe edition. There's people that are probably, like I said, I always credit the millennials for bringing back vinyl in the first place. It was them. It wasn't us old folks. We got suckered. We got suckered into that. CDs are better than vinyl. They'll last longer. They're harder to scratch up and all this other stuff. And but like I said, what's happening now technologically, okay, digital it's got some merit to it that it definitely did not have in the 80s. And we got suckered by clever marketing with that. So, but again, that being said, there's somebody, like, who are these kids that keep popping up on the internet? They are like, barely 12 and can play better than me. So it's like, and they're playing the old stuff. They're not trying to chase who, I don't know who, I could care less who's current now anyway, but whoever's current now, they're not trying to chase that. They're not using a bunch of computers and auto tune and all of this. These two kids play. They even like got to play with Lenny Kravitz on stage. Like I said, I don't know who these kids are, but like I said, those are kids playing music that when I was their age, just learning how to play certain things on a guitar. I was like, to me, things I can't even master, even to this day. It's like, wow, they're great. And that's the beauty and the power of music itself. So again, just let it go, just stop hating on the man. He was just, like I said, he was deep in thought, and it was a valid thought. So, but what do you think? Do you think it was a slap in the face to the fans, or, is it much ado about nothing? Leave a comment below. And from that, we are going to leave that topic and move on to our fourth and final topic. And this final topic is the year in review. All right. So what I'm going to do over the next few weeks is just kind of go over the different reissues and re-releases and everything that has come out within the past year, and just kind of quickly give my thoughts, impressions, and recollections on it. And we're going to start off with the first items that came out in February, and that was Musicology, 3121, and Planet Earth. And both of those were reissued on CD and on vinyl. And if you don't have them in your collection, if you want to fill your collection, I recommend you get all of those. For me, as far as the CDs, I already have Musicology and 3121. And those were the ones from, the original releases. So I didn't feel the need to run out and go get those again. So I did buy Planet Earth because I did have Planet Earth, and let's just say I didn't have it anymore. So wanted to reintroduce that into my collection. So I did purchase that one. As far as the vinyl releases, I've heard a lot of positive things about Musicology. So at some point, I will get the vinyl to Musicology. 3121, I don't know. I may get the vinyl to that one too. I'll tell you this, Musicology, out of those three releases, actually, Musicology is my favorite out of the three. I know a lot of people dump on that one, but for me, I wouldn't necessarily say it was a comeback. There were certain tracks that were a return to form. As far as like the use of the Linn drum machine, some of that pops up in certain tracks. To me, let's see, Call My Name is my favorite ballad on that one. Let's see, Reflection is a great track on there. I like the title track a little bit. Like I said, not overall one of my Prince favorites, but speaking of this particular era, I'll get to it in just a moment. But let's see what else. What Do You Want Me to Do is another one of my top favorites from that, because it has that vibe of Last Heart. To me, it's like Last Heart 2.0. This one where the subtlety was the organic instruments. To me, that same feeling is equal by the use of the Linn drum machine in that one, and the bass that's in that. So those are my like three favorites on there. Wait a minute. A Million Days. Oh, that's another favorite track of mine as well. So, I mean, overall, that's an album that I like listening to. I can listen to it from beginning to end, but those are, my standout tracks from that. Now, 3121, I know that's a lot of fan favorites. To me, I was slightly disappointed. Just after coming off the high of Musicology, I was slightly disappointed. But I'll say this, the first few tracks on 3121 are very strong, consistent, and to me has the makings of a great Prince album. Like I said, 3121, funky as all get out. You had Lita, which is kind of like a lost time track to me. You know, I could see the time doing that one. Te Amo Corazon, that's, you know, to me with the Claire Fisher strings, you know, kind of updated parade era to me. But Black Sweat, like I said, unlike Musicology, Black Sweat is to me what I call a postmodern Prince classic, which to me, Black Sweat stands up to anything in anybody, you know, what anybody thinks of the classic period. To me, if the way music is marketed, because we're kind of at, when that was released, you know, we were kind of in this thing of where the music industry was morphing more and more into the digital age. So a lot of what would have allowed this song to stand up to the classics, or to some people would have called it a comeback hit, a strong comeback hit at that. But if this song, if the 2000s still held to the same music industry and radio standards that had been around for, you know, the 50 to 75 years previously, oh yeah, this would have been one that would have put everybody to shame. Actually, I like Black Sweat. That one song demolishes anything that Justin Timberlake had that same year. Where with that album, yeah, he was trying to call out Prince and call out Michael Jackson. Well, guess what? You know, your butt got handed to you with that one song right there. So to me, 3121 was maybe 2 or 3 songs shy. Maybe if you swapped a couple of songs for other songs, to me, it would have been on a level of consistency as Musicology. And I mean, I've had people kind of sell me on 3121 to where I go back and listen to it and see it from their point of view. And it's an enjoyable album. I enjoy it slightly more now than I did when I first got it. And then Planet Earth is sort of the least favorite of mine. When I think about it now, Somewhere Here on Earth, to me, is the best track on that album. I did listen to it when I got this CD reissue, and to me, it's kind of one of those, if you want to listen to Prince and you don't want to listen to the classic stuff, you just really want to hear something different, or you really want to try to understand where he was trying to go with the particular album that may not be on your top list of favorites. I'd say the last time I listened to it, maybe my attitude toward it is slightly better than before. But yeah, Somewhere Here on Earth is still my absolute favorite track on that album. To my understanding, I think there's a different version of guitar that I might have heard elsewhere before having it on this album, and maybe that's the version I like better than what's on the album itself. But I don't know. It was a decent listening experience. It was kind of like, you know, like Prince was saying, you know, it's like it's nice to put on every album and have it be different. So I respected in the fact that, you know, he wasn't trying to tread water with it. You know, he was always trying to, not only challenge us, maybe challenge himself as well. So I appreciate it on that level. And again, you know, it's nice to have it back in my collection and have it, you know, to try to regain that consistency once again with it. So all in all, that was a pretty good step in as far as reissuing things that have been out of print. That was a pretty good start to me. there was a segment I did in the earlier episodes of Amari Purple Talk as to what the next trio of those sort of 90s 2000s releases would be next for 2020. So as far as this year, that was a pretty good start because it got us all hyped as Prince fans. We were excited. It was something that we weren't expecting prior to the announcement, but it was nice to get that announcement because we were coming off of the heels of the piano and piano and the microphone. Yeah, we were coming off the heels of that one. And, that was kind of a mix. It was a mixed bag. Again, it was one of the things, it's nice to have an official copy, because that was one that I've never heard, but a lot of people had that in their bootleg collections. But the reviews were mixed on that one as far as, what's the estate doing? This isn't working. But with that was sort of a thing that kind of relifted our spirits a bit. And it was nice to have it on vinyl too. So like I said, I'm looking forward to at least definitely getting Musicology on vinyl. Maybe after that 3121 on vinyl. But it's nice to have the Planet Earth CD back in the collection. So what do you think? Did you enjoy those three choices as releases from the estate or reissues from Sony? Is there something that you're looking forward to in 2020? Well, leave me a comment below. And that is going to end our topics. And we're going to end the show with an announcement. All right, so basically, like I said, we're going to continue, and I'm going to get ready for, 2020. We're going to improve Amari Purple Talk. We're going to streamline our segments. Maybe a new theme song, depends on if I have time. I'm going to be working on some other stuff. So if I can fit it in, maybe a new theme song with that. But the most important announcement is going to be I'm going to start a second podcast. And this podcast is going to strictly be about the funk, the whole funk, and nothing but the funk. And the name of this show will be the Amari Funk Soloist Hour. And that's still in development. I'm going to get this out in sometime in 2020. I will definitely let you guys know the release date. But if you are not only a fan of Prince, but if you are also a fan of, say, Parliament Funkadelic, Cameo, Lakeside, Rufus, Shaka Khan, this show will be dedicated to those artists and music. And like I said, still developing the format. The segments won't be the same as the way I do the segments on Amari Purple Talk. But like I said, we're getting ready to evolve that for 2020 as well. So definitely a new look, new vibe for that show. Look out for the Funk Soloist Hour. And I'm excited to get started on that one. And some other projects and things that I'll share with you guys as soon as I'm ready to share them. So again, thank you very, very much for tuning in. Continue supporting the show with your likes. If you listen to the show on YouTube, definitely hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Definitely leave some comments as well. So do that. And again, thanks to all the Facebook groups out there that take the time and check out my posts and like and comment, and look forward to your comments as well. And here we are. We're getting close to the end of 2019. Can't wait to finally get my 1999 Super Deluxe Edition. All right, so have a good week. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And as always, keep it purple and on the one.